Oprah Winfrey, the woman who built an empire from nothing, who turned pain into purpose, who made the world feel seen, has at 72, become something no title or dollar amount could ever fully capture. A living testament to survival. She is worth over $2.8 billion. Her name is synonymous with empathy, generosity, and power. Millions have wept in her presence. Millions more have healed because of her words. But this is not the story of the glittering throne. This is the story of the girl, born into poverty in rural Mississippi, who was abused before she understood what abuse was, who lost a child before she was old enough to raise one, who battled her own mind and body for decades, while smiling for the cameras. Tragic, heartbreaking, devastating, and yet, undeniably, triumphant. Because behind the warmth, behind the generosity, behind every car she ever gave away, lies a story not glamorous but brutal. If Oprah Winfrey has ever made you feel like your story was worth telling, hit like as a tribute to her extraordinary courage. This is the story of a girl discarded by circumstance, rebuilt by sheer will, and ultimately transformed into the most influential woman in the history of American media. This is the full, unfiltered journey of Oprah Winfrey. The beginning was not glamorous, but cold. Oprah Gail Winfrey was born on January 29, 1954, in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, a small, rural town where poverty wasn't a condition, it was a culture. Her mother, Vernita Lee, was a teenage housemaid. Her father, Vernon Winfrey, a coal miner and later a barber, was not present in her earliest years in any meaningful way. She was marked not by celebration, but by absence. For the first years of her life, Oprah was raised by her maternal grandmother, Hattie Mae Lee, on a farm with no running water, no television, no safety net. She wore dresses sewn from potato sacks. She fed the pigs and carried the weight of a life that had already decided she didn't matter. What few people know is that even then, Oprah was reading, talking, performing. Her grandmother taught her to read before she was 3 years old, a gift that would one day be worth billions. At 6 years old, she was sent to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to live with her mother, Vernita, who was working and struggling and not equipped to parent the precocious, sensitive child Oprah had become. It is heartbreaking when a child reaches toward her mother and finds distance instead of arms. In Milwaukee, things got worse. Between the ages of 9 and 13, Oprah was sexually abused by multiple people she trusted: a cousin, a family friend, an uncle. She carried that silence for years, buried it, performed around it, smiled over it. At 30, and she ran away. At 14, she became pregnant. The baby, a boy, was born premature and did not survive. Oprah has spoken about this loss only sparingly, but its shadow never left her. She was sent to live with her father, Vernon, in Nashville, Tennessee. And that finally was the turning point. Vernon Winfrey was strict, structured. He required reading. He required excellence. He gave her what her early years had denied her: boundaries built from love. The girl who had been thrown to the margins began to rise. Then came 1971. Oprah, just 17, won the Miss Black Tennessee beauty pageant. A local Nashville radio station, WVOL, noticed her. They hired her. A teenager who had survived the unsurvivable was now broadcasting her voice to the world. She earned a full scholarship to Tennessee State University, where she studied communication. But even before she graduated, opportunity came knocking. By 1976, Oprah was co-anchoring the evening news at WJZ-TV in Baltimore, Maryland. She was 22. She was also, by the station's own quiet admission, too emotional for hard news. They moved her to a local talk show called People Are Talking. The world saw a demotion. The truth was different. She was made for this. The moment Oprah sat across from a guest and simply listened, really listened, the ratings moved. People called in. People wept. People felt, for the first time on television, that someone on the other side of the screen actually cared. Then came 1984, Chicago, a failing half-hour morning talk show called AM Chicago needed a host. Oprah, then 30, took the job. Within a month, the show went from last place to first. Within a year, it was expanded to an hour. By 1986, it was renamed The Oprah Winfrey Show and went into national syndication. The first year of national broadcast earned Oprah approximately $30 million. She was 32 years old. Suddenly, everything changed. Also in 1986, Oprah received her first Academy Award nomination for her role as Sophia in Steven Spielberg's The Color Purple, a film she had campaigned aggressively to be cast in. Reportedly moved to tears when she got the call. She earned $35,000 for that performance. What she earned in cultural impact was incalculable. By 1988, she had formed Harpo Productions, making her one of the first women in American history to own and produce her own television show. She bought back her show from a BC she owned herself. In an industry that had spent decades telling women, particularly black women, to be grateful for the seat they were given, Oprah bought the table. By the mid-1990s, the Oprah Winfrey Show was reaching 30 to 40 million viewers per week in the United States alone, broadcast in 140 countries. The Oprah effect became a documented economic phenomenon. A single mention of a book on her show could send it to the top of the New York Times bestseller list overnight. Authors called it magic. Publishers called it business. Oprah called it responsibility. By 2003, Forbes declared her the first black female billionaire in history. She was 49 years old. She had come from potato sack dresses to a $1 billion net worth in less than 5 decades. But the cameras never showed the full cost. Behind the success lies a woman who has known grief in forms the public rarely sees. Completely. The loss no mother forgets. It began before the fame. Before the lights. At 14 years old, Oprah gave birth to a premature baby boy in Milwaukee. He was born on February 8, 1968. He lived only 2 weeks. She has never named him publicly. She has referred to him in interviews as the most painful experience of her life, not just the loss, but the circumstances that led to the pregnancy, the abuse, the silence, the shame that surrounded a child trying to survive in an environment that had already failed her so completely. She carried that grief for decades before she ever said it aloud. And when she finally did, on her own show, in front of millions, the world witnessed something television had never quite seen before. A powerful woman refusing to perform around her pain. It is heartbreaking when the things that break us most are also the things we carry longest alone. The weight beneath the spotlight for over 3 decades. Oprah's relationship with her body became one of the most public and painful struggles of her career. She has been open about her food addiction, what she described not as vanity or weakness, but as a response to trauma. Eating, she explained, was the first thing that ever made her feel safe. And then it became its own prison. In 1988, she famously wheeled a wagon of animal fat onto her stage to represent the 67 pounds she had lost on a liquid diet. She wore a size 10 Calvin Klein jeans. The moment was triumphant. The aftermath was devastating. The weight returned within months. What few people know is how deeply this cycle wounded her privately. In her own words, "I didn't just want to be thinner. I wanted to stop hating myself." She spent years trying every program, every approach, every framework. Not for television, not for magazine covers, but because the little girl who had been used and discarded by people who were supposed to love her had grown into a woman who still, quietly, questioned her own worth. By the 2010s, she had been candid about the role of trauma in her eating patterns, partnering with Weight Watchers in 2015 and later discussing the use of medications like Ozempic in managing her health, a disclosure she made with the same unflinching honesty that had defined her entire career. The relationship that wouldn't fit the fairy tale for over 40 years. Oprah has been partnered with Stedman Graham, the educator and businessman she met in 1986. They became engaged in 1992. They never married. She has explained this with characteristic clarity. Marriage, she has said, would have changed the dynamic in ways that might have ended what they have. She has spoken openly about her decision not to have children, a choice she made deliberately and without apology. She has said she knew early on that her life's work required a kind of total devotion that could not be divided without cost. But there were years, difficult, searching years, when that choice felt less like liberation and more like loneliness. When the woman who made millions feel less alone sat in rooms that echoed the loss of her mother, Vernita Lee, Oprah's mother, The woman whose absence shaped her daughter's earliest hunger passed away on Thanksgiving Day, November 22nd, 2018. She was 8'3". The announcement came quietly. No press conference. No televised tribute. Just a brief statement confirming that the woman who had, by her own complicated inability, given Oprah both the wound and the will to survive, was gone. What the world rarely discusses is the complexity of grieving a parent who hurt you simply by not knowing how to love you. It is one of the most particular forms of loss, mourning not just the person, but the version of the relationship that never came to be. Oprah spoke about her mother with grace. Always with grace. But grace, as anyone who has practiced it under pressure knows, is not the absence of grief. It is grief that has learned to walk upright. Today, at 72, Oprah Winfrey lives on her 42-acre estate in Montecito, California, a property that has become something of a sanctuary. The gardens are immaculate. The peace, by her own account, is hard-won and deeply valued. Her net worth stands at an estimated $2.8 billion. But the number she seems most proud of is different. The over $500 million she has donated to educational causes throughout her lifetime, including the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in Henley-on-Klip, South Africa, which she founded in 2007 and continues to fund and visit personally. Those girls, many of them from impoverished backgrounds, many of them survivors of their own early devastations, are perhaps her truest legacy. Her friendship with Gayle King, sustained for nearly 50 years, remains one of the defining relationships of her life. Her bond with Stedman endures. Her dogs, her garden, her books, these are the textures of a daily life she has, deliberately and gratefully made small enough to inhabit fully. In recent years, she's been candid about her spiritual life, her therapy, and her ongoing work of becoming. Not performing wellness. Actually pursuing it. Her production company Harpo remains active. Her partnership with Apple TV Plus continues to produce meaningful content. And Oprah Daily, her media brand, extends her voice into a new generation's feeds and screens. She is not slowing down. She is deepening. At 72, Oprah Winfrey stands as proof that the story you are born into is not the story you are required to keep telling. From Kosciuszko, Mississippi, to the heights of Hollywood and beyond, from a potato sack dress on a farm with no running water to a $2.8 billion empire built entirely on the radical act of making people feel less alone. She survived what would have silenced most. She transformed what would have consumed others. And she did it not by pretending the pain wasn't real, but by refusing to let it be the final word. That is the lesson. Not that strength is the absence of breaking, but that you can break completely, repeatedly, and still choose to rebuild. If this story touched your heart, leave a tribute below. Share a moment when Oprah's words or her courage, or simply the way she looked at a guest and said, "I see you," reminded you that empathy is still the most powerful force in the world. That your story still matters. That it has always mattered. Just like hers.